Thank you very much, Karen. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of Sustainable Development Policy Institute and Idobro Impact Solutions, I warmly welcome you to the roundtable discussion on public-private partnership in agriculture value chains, the South Asian experience. It is a great pleasure and honor to formally welcome our distinguished panelists joining us from across SAARC region. We deeply appreciate your valuable time and presence. I would also like to extend warm regards to our esteemed audience joining us from various parts of the world. Our session will be moderated by Mr. Abdullah Khalid and Mr. Ankush Singh. Before handing the session over to our moderators, I would like to briefly outline the housekeeping rules to ensure the session runs smoothly. May I please request all speakers to keep their microphones muted when not speaking to maintain clear audio quality for everyone. If possible, speakers are encouraged to turn on their cameras while speaking, provided their network allow without any disruption. The session will be recorded. The video will be made available online. You are welcome to revisit the discussion later. We invite questions from audience during the session or at the end. You may write your questions in the chat box or at the Q&A session box on the right-hand side of your screen. I also have the honor to introduce our esteemed moderator, Mr. Abdullah Khalid. He is Deputy Head of the Center for Private Sector Engagement, STPI, Pakistan, and Mr. Ankush Singh. He is Head of Strategy and Partnership, Idobro Impact Solutions, India. With that, I now hand over the session to moderator to proceed the discussion. Thank you, and I wish you engaging and fruitful discussion. Over to you, Abdullah.
Thank you very much, Sahaj, for the housekeeping and for a very thorough opening of the session. I would start off the session with a very good evening to the distinguished speakers, panelists who are joining us from the SAARC region. We are thankful to you, and I welcome you all today to this very important roundtable that we have curated, focused on public-private partnerships in agri-value chains focused toward South Asian perspective. To start off, I would like to build on the context of how this overall discussion would be moving forward. When we look into the landscape of agriculture in South Asia, no doubt it's a critical juncture which needs to be looked into. And at this point, the public-private partnerships have emerged as a very pivotal instrument for addressing the mounting challenge that we have been facing in the agriculture sector, particularly those related to climate change, environmental degradation, and many other things that are related to this particular component that we are discussing today. No doubt the partnerships are increasingly crucial as they bridge the gap between the public policy objectives that are present throughout the countries to which we will be requesting for their thoughts. When we talk about the policy objective, those are focused toward reducing food insecurity. They are focused toward reducing the rural poverty that is very prevalent in the majority of the SAARC region, and the private sector innovation which needs to be addressed and is being addressed at different points. So let me elaborate on why this discussion is particularly significant for the South Asian region. When we talk about this, firstly is that no doubt South Asia presents a very unique opportunity for the public-private partnership development. And when we talk about the public-private partnership development in the agri value chain, it's more focused toward the vast base of the small, I would say, smallholder farmers who form the backbone of our agriculture economy. That's either India, that's either Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, even Afghanistan, and Bangladesh as well. So on the contrary, as we talk about the agri chain, there is a growing ecosystem of agri-tech With the inclusion of technology, things are changing. We see agri-tech enterprises who are trying to address the biodegradable issues that are existing in our region, and are also focusing on producing entrepreneurship models and stages that are quite helpful. So when we talk about the value chain, we are witnessing a significant shift towards high value crops. That's also prevalent, which increases the potential of agricultural surplus for exports, which contributes to the GDP of the countries. However, when we talk about the opportunities, with the opportunities, there are challenges that everyone is facing, and they are prevalent throughout the SAARC regions. I'll highlight a few, and from there we'll be taking toward the August speakers, where they will be shedding light on the challenges that are prevailing in the SAARC region in their own countries, particularly. When we talk about the challenges, we always see a fragmented land holdings, which have been affecting the operational efficiency, leading to a significant post-harvest infrastructure gap mostly toward the smooth private sector engagement when we talk about. And that when we talk about private sector engagement, we see regulatory and policy constraints that hinder the productivity by the private sectors. There is also a need of substantial investment in infrastructure such as cold chains that need to be looked into, cold storages, and the logistics is important. So despite these challenges, the SAARC region have demonstrated remarkable success through various public-private partnership models throughout the countries. I'll be just highlighting a few which we have also shared in the concept note. When we look into India, we'll see remarkable work that they have done when it comes to the e-chopals, where they have revolutionized the farmer access to market information by connecting them to the right buyers via the digital platforms. Another important initiative I would particularly like to highlight of the Indian government that they have taken is Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. That's the one that has enhanced the agricultural productivity through the private sector collaborations. That's where that's a point, a turning point where private sectors have been contributing toward the GDPs of the country. When we talk about Bangladesh, the Bangladesh Arla Food and the Barak partnership no doubt strengthened the dairy value chain through comprehensive farming. And by farming, we would say the more capacity building that they had looked into by linking up with the markets where they were able to take their products and get the benefit out of it. Since when we talk about the development fund that they have, which countries have been looking into, when we see about Bangladesh, we see the USAID. The Feed Future initiative, which was introduced, has successfully promoted better seeds and farming practices. And simultaneously, when it comes to Pakistan, we see good examples that have evolved and are present. If we look into the private sector contribution, we see that Angro's Agri Value Chain initiative did a remarkable work where they transformed the dairy and the horticulture sector, particularly through direct procurement systems. On the contrary, the Benazir Income Support Program run by the government at this moment, with this collaboration with the private sector and the development donor organizations, have facilitated access to modern agriculture inputs and empowered women farmers. So these are things which are quite evident. Similarly, in Sri Lanka, we see the tea smallholder factories initiative, which boosted the data. The tea quality I would particularly talk about, and also the export market made remarkable contributions. Whether when it comes to Nepal, we see that the improvement of agriculture extension services throughout the local government and the private sector collaboration did significantly enhance the crop production and farming. Looking ahead, when we talk about all these great works that we are doing in our countries, we see an emerging opportunity. and we talk about the emerging opportunity that's the digital agriculture innovation powered by mobile apps, IoT, and artificial intelligence. That's something that needs to be looked into. Green financing models, focusing on renewable energies, organic farming, carbon credits. We believe that everyone is looking into this, but it's an opportunity where the regional collaboration could integrate a very positive response. So moving forward, I'd like to introduce the August panel from where we'll be taking the discussion forward. Today we have been joined by Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleiri, Executive Director of Sustainable Development Policy Institute. We have been joined by Dr. Muntasir Saqib Khan, who is the Country Director, IFDC Bangladesh. We are also joined by Dr. Krishna Prasad, Member Soati, and former Joint Secretary Government of Nepal. We are also joined by Dr. Manoj, Executive Director, the Institute of Public Policy Studies from Sri Lanka. We're joined by Ms. Rupsi Garg, Rural Development and Heritage Conservation from Keti Vasad Mission, India. We're also joined by Mr. Suryamani Role, Managing Trustee, Forum of Enterprise for Equitable Development, India. We are joined by Mr. Navajit Dev, Director of Research, Authority Associates, Afghanistan. Thank you very much for joining. I'll be taking the discussion forward to Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleiri for his thoughts, particularly when we talk about how South Asian countries are aligning their food security and climate resilience strategies to address shared challenges across border. And simultaneously, when we talk about these things, we see that the Pakistan's experience toward agriculture transformation plan, particularly towards the public-private partnerships, can be designed to ensure inclusivity for marginalized farmers and how the same could be replicated at the South Asian level. Over to you, Dr. Abid.
Well, thank you, Abdullah, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending from where you have joined. It's indeed a great honor to be among this galaxy of eminent experts and panelists here. Now, the topic that we are discussing, I think one common thread that is there in South Asia is the importance of agriculture as subsistence farming as a livelihood provider for small farmers and rural economies. And this actually has shaped the nature of public-private partnership across countries. Now, if one looks at Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, the three major agriculture countries in the region, and then of course Sri Lanka, which has its own agriculture but then has to import food commodities as well. Nepal, where we have this hill terrace farming. One can see that share of agriculture in GDP that is sort of stagnant and much lesser than services sector, but then share of employability and the absorption of human resources in this sector, at least in the three countries, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, is much higher than its share in GDP. And that is precisely the reason whenever there is a discussion or an attempt to enter in public-private partnership in this sector without taking care of or providing assurance or providing protection to small farmers, landless farmers, are those whose bread and butter is directly linked with the agriculture sector. Those attempts, they often don't provide the desired results. And we have seen it happening in case of India, in Indian Punjab and Haryana. We have seen it happening in case of Pakistan, where this gradual withdrawal of government's subsidy on wheat sector that is causing some stress, and last year that had led to some sort of irritation among farmers. And we also saw that in case of Sri Lanka, for example, one of the reason, and I'm very keen to hear from our experts from IPS, but what we assume sitting outside, that one of the reason for this mass restlessness before Sri Lanka officially defaulted on its external debts was a lack of availability of the food items, food commodities, and I think that was a trigger point. Food and fuel, followed by medicine. That was a trigger point. Uh, Now, I think moving forward, one needs to see the potential points for collaboration between our rural economies and private sector, vis-a-vis between the major actors and stakeholders in rural economies with the private sector. Uh, I think at least in case of Pakistan, when I was looking after Prime Minister's Agriculture Transformation Plan in 2022. We were trying to remain as a deal breaker between farmers and private sector, between farmers and intermediaries, including quote unquote one of uh, very negatively expressed term, the middle person, the middleman, artis. Uh, I think artis are also part of private sector, and they keep on doing what many of the governments cannot do. They buy the standing crop, thus they are providing insurance. They are grading and exporting the commodities, thereby taking care of logistics. They are buying from the farmers, thereby taking the markets to the farmers' doorstep. They are providing loans to the farmers without a collateral. But with all these services, of course, many of them, they are also engaged in exploitative practices and earning undue profit from farmers. And I think the government's role is to regulate and to facilitate
Uh, we're not able to hear you, Dr.
Reliance and all other mega players in this industry. And one thing that we can learn from each other in South Asia is how best to take care of the interest of our rural communities while modernizing them, while transforming them, and while linking them to the private sector, which is a must for the climate change resistance or climate change smart agriculture, for which otherwise our small farmers who make up the majority of agriculture workers and agriculture sector in South Asia, they would not be able to take the full benefit of it. So I'll stop here, Abdullah, at this round, and I'll be very keen to listen from my other experts.
Thank you, Dr. Abid, for your thoughts, particularly on uplifting of the rural communities, particularly the SMEs that requires protection. So, in view of your points, I'll be moving forward to Dr. Manoj, who is the Executive Director at IPS. In view of your experience, how the Sri Lankan government and the economy has gone through the inflation and how they have stepped out of it. I would like to hear from you what challenges were there, how was the government able to address them. On the other hand, what role does the climate change play in reshaping the agriculture value chains in Sri Lanka and also in South Asia? And also, if you could highlight how should the regional policies adapt to these changes?
Thank you, Abdullah. Just clarification, I'm not the executive director at IPS. I'm a research fellow and head of the agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you, Father.
As Dr. Abid mentioned, Sri Lanka has gone through a period of economic turbulence because of it started with the COVID-19 in 2020, and then we had that impact of Ukraine-Russia crisis, and then previous government ban on chemical fertilizers. So everything contributed to the food shortages and rising food prices, as well as fuel and fertilizer. So 3F, we had that crisis in 3F, food, fuel, and fertilizer. Because in one hand, we didn't have foreign reserves to buy fertilizer and food imports. Also, the prices of the fertilizer went high in the world market after COVID-19. And with everything, we had the problem. So with the support of different countries, and also we we went for the IMF program to bail out the economy, and we had several restrictions to the economy, like controlling a lot of imports, including the vehicles and other luxury items, and even some foods under taxes and all. So after COVID and with the economic crisis, one of our main sources of income from remittances and tourism also stopped. Now all these are picking up with this. Now we are recovering. We are in the recovering stage. So new government is mainly focusing on agricultural development, especially bringing in technology and adaptation to climate change. Things like that to boost the economy through the agricultural development. So as Dr. Suleri said, in Sri Lanka as well, the contribution of the agriculture sector to the GDP is declining. It's about 7% right now, but the population engaged in agriculture, the employment agriculture is about 25%. So still, it's a significant percentage, but they contribute 25% contribute to only to 7% of GDP. So it means that we have a problem in terms of productivity, including the climate change and everything. So South Asian region, especially it's a climate hotspot, so vulnerable to climate change due to high population density, poverty, and lack of resources for adaptation, especially because most of the farming community is in the region is smallholders. IPCC identified different ways that climate change happens in the region. One is above average warming, that is temperature increasing and increase monsoon rainfall. In Sri Lanka, it's not just increase, but we have that irregularity in rainfall. Rainfall pattern has changed and increase in frequency of extreme events like floods and droughts. So these things has exacerbated in recent times. So this has impacted agricultural value chains, starting from the producer stage and processing, transportation, distribution. Everything has affected, especially rise in temperature, rainfall pattern changes, and extreme events has reduced productivity in agriculture, rise productivity. It's expected that productivity, agriculture productivity in the region will go down by about 10 to 15% at the end of the century due to effect of global warming if not proper adaptation methods are not adapted. And also we have experienced shift in ecological zones like recent. So we have 46 ecological zones based on the temperature, precipitation, soil type, and the elevation. But now there are specific crops for each agroecological regions, but now some crops cannot be grown in some agroecological regions because of the climate change. especially teas or tea plantations are also affected by the climate change. So this has a big impact on smallholder farmers. Post-harving losses, this is also affected by the climate change. Processing practices, then market access infrastructure because of the cyclones and floods. So a lot of damages are happening due to the change of climate change. So not only we have that country-specific strategies to address climate change, like climate smart agriculture and things like that, but we have individual countries have a lot of gaps in terms of funding, knowledge, expertise, things like that. So regional policies, I think, can bring in here to address most of these challenges, like regional research collaboration, like we have that Sri Lanka Council for Agriculture Research Policy, and India has Indian Council for Agriculture Research, and Pakistan Agriculture Research Council. Like these institutes can collaborate to strengthen the partnership in research and also disaster in terms of disaster management as well. We have that SARC disaster management. We have individual disaster management centers in the country. These can be collaborated, especially in terms of disaster resilience and early warning systems. Also, we can have cross-country collaboration in terms of regional dialogue and knowledge sharing, regional training and capacity building. So we can have national level technical assistance program to align with the regional engagement. So and also data sharing. Data sharing is very important. And also maybe we can consider funding, mobilize international climate funds through regional efforts like access financing from Green Climate Fund, World Bank, ADB, and other institutes. So these things can be done to increase the resilience to climate change and increase the public-private partnership in terms of mitigating and climate adaptation. So I will stop here. Maybe we can discuss further in the next round.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj, for highlighting the pertinent the issues that were present within Sri Lanka in terms of the geopolitical situations which impacted the overall economy of the country, and how you are looking forward to improving it by more focusing toward the agricultural strategies that have been adopted. Simultaneously, global warming, no doubt, is impacting every country at this moment. Pakistan is also going through severe climatic changes. So this is something that is persistent, and that's present throughout all SAARC countries, and this is a challenge that we all have to look into. So moving forward, I'll be taking Dr. Krishna Pant, who is a member of Swati and former Joint Secretary, to take your 2 cents on your experience as a government official and as a member of Swati. How do you see the policy expertise that you have, and a very rich research background of yours in terms of agricultural value chain, productivity enhancement? How do you foresee the South Asian countries and their governments who require a certain enabling environment, and what steps are required for enhancing the public-private partnerships that would be balancing the public interest with private sector incentives in agriculture value chain? We see that Nepal has demonstrated success in improving their agricultural extension services. That is evident through the government-private sector collaboration. So over to you, your thoughts. What are the key areas that should be looked in?
Thank you, Abdullah. I take this opportunity to share with you my experience. I haven't done any research on this topic. That's why my talk will be mainly based on my experience. This private sector development is not coming up as we expected because of a small volume of production. In South Asian region, we have small farmers, volume of production is small, and then business scale is not met as expected by the private sector. That's the reason in many cases private sectors are not coming up, and then those private sectors are coming up, and then they are not getting volume of their trade, and then a small number of traders we have that can't ensure the competitiveness in the market. That ultimately affects the farmers, because farmers, they need to buy the product from incomplete market, product inputs from the incomplete market, and again sell their products to less competitive market. That's why farmers are sufferers. In that case, if we see case of Nepal, many farms are getting vacant now. Around 1 million hectare land is abandoned by now in Nepal. Many villages are getting empty because farmers are not getting enough return out of the farm. Because earlier, opportunity cost was very low for doing farming. They were not having alternative employment. That's why they used to do farming, because alternative cost of labor was very low. Opportunity cost of labor was very low. Now, farmers, families, they are getting alternative employment elsewhere in other sectors. Now, opportunity cost of labor has gone up, and many of the farming systems have gone non-viable. In this case, I would like to share one example of Nepal for public-private partnership. We have a Federation of Nepalese Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Within that, we have one Agro Enterprise Center. Agro Enterprise Center is an umbrella organization of all the agricultural enterprises in the country. Then government did public-private partnership agreement with Agro Enterprise Center, the umbrella organization, for promoting one village, one product. That one village, one product was promoted by the private sector, because the Agro Enterprise Center is being the umbrella organization of agro enterprises. They can link to the value chain. The product can be linked to the value chain. Okay. From that public-private partnership, some products are developed like cardamom, ginger, tea. These products got some momentum. Products were already there, but it got some momentum. Some herbs cultivation, marketing also started. Okay. This public-private partnership, really what we visualize, this is for sharing the resources. Private sector resources, public sector resources to be shared. But in this case of Agro Enterprise Center, resources was funded by the government. Okay. Government funded. Okay. That's it. And then second issue in public-private partnership is risk sharing. Who bear the risk? Government and private sector should share the risk. But in the risk sharing case, mostly risk went to the farmers. If market is not available, farmers are suffering. Neither private sector nor the government. Farmers are suffering. Okay. The third component of this public-private partnership is innovation. The private sector has much flexible use of resources. Flexibility in decision making. Okay. That's why this is a innovation. They have private sector, they have innovations. Okay. But where from the innovation comes? Where there's competition, then innovation comes. When market is small, competitiveness is less. Okay. And innovativeness is limited. In that case, as already shared, that we have 30 years of government, and 30 years of government are working with private sector for development of agriculture. But agriculture investment is limited from the private sector. Private sector not investing much. Okay. They are investing for trading of agricultural products, trading of inputs, not much in manufacturing of machines and equipment, manufacturing of fertilizers, okay, and agricultural research. In this area, private sector are not yet coming up. Maybe due to inefficient system of risk sharing and less opportunity for innovation. That way, public-private partnership in Nepal's case is not coming up as we expect. In the value chain is managed by private sector. Okay. Milk value chain, almost by the private sector. Government is also involved in its own line. Okay. And fruits, vegetable value chains, all are governed by, worked by private sector. Okay. In those areas, government is still working for the value chain. That's more or less competing with the private sector rather than promoting the private sector. That problem we are still facing. And in South Asian context, our markets are not well linked. Though Indian market and Nepali market are mostly integrated, we transfer the risk, we transfer the price. Price transfer is very fast, but not much linked. Main thing is to promote the public-private partnership. We need to go for linking our markets in South Asian countries. That give opportunity for the private sector investment, and then farmers can get better market for their products, because in different season we produce different things. Okay. Nepal can produce cauliflower in July, August, that India can't produce. Okay. India produces certain items in different months than in Nepal. Okay. We have complementarity of the products. And input manufacturing is not economical for a small country like Nepal to have a bigger scale of fully scaled fertilizer manufacturing plant, a fully scaled machine equipment manufacturing plants. That we can see in South Asia. Shared perspective is important to move ahead with the value chain development involving public-private partnership. Over to you, Abdullah.
So thank you very much for your in-depth overview of how things are happening in Nepal. And my takeaway would be to be more focused on the cross-border trade, which is quite important to ensure that the value chain in terms of South Asia is more enhanced. Similarly, another important factor that we taking away from your talk would be the Chamber of Commerce and Industries that need to be looked into, and this is something what Pakistan at this moment is looking forward on, enhancing their capacities more toward the public-private partnership. So from your point of view, I'll be taking the discussion to Ms. Rupsi Garg from the Rural Development and Heritage Conservation. Rupsi, in view of your expertise, the thing important when it comes to empowering the rural woman, when we talk about, and an important point that our colleague from Nepal has also highlighted, it's the capacity building, the skill building that needs to be looked into. So how do you see the public-private models are being tailored to empower the rural community, particularly women, through the skill building and access to the agri markets in South Asia? Simultaneously, if you could highlight what your lessons have been when it comes to the work that you are taking forward in terms of heritage conversation and the rural development in reviving the traditional skills, and how South Asia can benefit from this for sustainable agriculture practices. Over to you, Rupsi.
Namaskar, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to this talk. So we are an organization called Kheti Virasat Mission working in Punjab, India. For the last 20 years, we are working on organic farming, sustainable agriculture, ecological practices. Because in 1960s or 1970s, we were not food self-sufficient. So we had to import the food. And that is why Green Revolution happened. Punjab and Haryana area of India was chosen for it. And we used high yielding variety seeds, irrigation facilities, heavy mechanization. So we got production, but the nutritional value in the food reduced, and people started having health issues, and there are environmental issues also, like our soil, water, and air are depleting day by day. Groundwater is depleting. So pesticide use is increased, and that is why there are cancer, reproductive health issues, and many, not just physical health issues, but there are mental and emotional health issues as well. So it was all recognized by Shri Umender Dutt, founder of Kheti Virasat Mission, way back in 1996. And he started visiting Punjab. He spoke to certain farmers, and at that time there was not even a single farmer doing organic farming in Punjab. So he invited various experts and people from other parts of the country to talk about organic farming. So it help people to think that pesticides and fertilizers are really harmful for people's health and for the environment also, and then how can we do the farming. So there were workshops organized, meetings, exposure visits, and that is how this organic farming movement started in Punjab. So while working on safe food, we realized that clothing is also equally important, and we focused on village as an independent unit, because in our villages in South Asia mainly, if we talk about, and in India specifically, so our villages are independent units where we have producers, processors, and consumers. So farmer is a producer who produces food, clothing, medicine, wood for furniture, and it gets processed by artisans. So artisans also belong to that village. These artisans are weavers, spinners, carpenters, blacksmiths. These are some Ved, traditional medical healers. So all these people are there, but when we are moved to this modernity and all these things were given to state, that state will take care of it. So people lost their traditional knowledge. It happened in every sector, not just in farming sector, but in processing sector also. And the traditional knowledge and skills are lost. So I have been associated with KVM for last 7 years, and I went to villages, many villages of Punjab, and I have seen that still there are those connections, because it was not just for the production, processing, and consumption part, but there was a societal, cultural ecosystem. It was a civilizational and cultural way of living. It was more of lifestyle. It was not just of livelihoods and economic security, but the way of living, like people were associated to each other. So there is a big area in Punjab and Haryana which was known as cotton belt. But now that entire area is either shifted to paddy cultivation, or BT cotton is being grown. BT cotton is grown with chemicals, and cotton is one of the crops which uses highest pesticides. And it has been seen that in that cotton growing area, there are maximum cases of cancer, and that organic cotton is being stopped now. So Kheti Virasat Mission started mobilizing farmers on the organic cotton, and we saw that this organic cotton is produced by the farmers, and it was processed by rural women on charkha and handloom weaving. But that entire value chain is broken because there is not that raw material available, and that is why spinning and weaving is also not happening. So in last 7 years, we started working with the farmers and artisans, and we are able to revive this complete value chain from farmers to spinners to weavers. And now we have about 300 artisans associated with us, mainly women, who do charkha spinning and handloom weaving. So it is like a decentralized model. Krishna ji was talking about inter-country trade. That is also important, but we need to look at the decentralized manner also, like how our production, processing, and consumption can happen in a local area, because it will reduce transport, it will cut down the cost, and there are many other benefits. People know where this particular thing is being grown, and it is being consumed. So that is how we are working on this model, and people are really happy. Farmers are increasing the cotton area. Artisans are also coming to it. And today's topic is on public-private partnership, right? So I think all the stakeholders are important. Public needs to aware on these points, why organic food, why agriculture, why handicrafts, why local skills are important. Private sector also needs to play a role ki how they can, it is not just about financial support, it is about their understanding and intellectual level also, because sometimes and most of the times whenever we talk about some partnerships, some collaborations, it gets concentrated on the funding part, on the sponsorship part. But more than that, it is to sustain that system in long term and become a partner in that. So public-private partnerships are important because in local area, we have public, we have private sector, we have government sector. So the coordination and communication among them is really important. But nowadays we see in India also that people are working in silos. They are really isolated, and the communication and the day-to-day coordination and how the things are happening around is really missing. So if we could focus, I know this is just a online talk, and we need really deep discussions. And South Asia is very big region, but when we work in a small area, there are many challenges, technical challenges, social challenges, many other things. Marketing is altogether an issue. Farmer says that I can do the production, but marketing should be done by somebody else. So there are many things. So I hope that we get time and we get to discuss more things, because in 10 minutes time, it is not sufficient. So
Yes, I agree on this point. I agree. Sorry for the interruption. I do understand the points that you're trying to highlight, and this 10 minutes won't be able to do justice to what you're trying to address to. So in view of the time, I'll be coming back to you again for the next round of intervention. My takeaway from your the points would be that socioeconomic factors need to be looked into simultaneously, product diversification that needs to be addressed, that would be more efficient when it comes to the public-private partnerships. Moving forward, I'll be taking the Mr. Nabajit De, Director of Research at Android Associates Afghanistan. Mr. Nabajit, your thoughts and your 2 cents on how Afghanistan is functioning at this moment when it comes to the inclusive reintegration policies that addresses the need of the rural migrant and refugees in Afghanistan, more focused towards the agriculture, and what steps are being taken towards I would rather say the public-private development in Afghanistan. We are aware how what fragile the situation is over there, what context Afghanistan has at this moment. But based on your work, what steps have been taken to mitigate it, and how South Asian countries could play a very pivotal role in enhancing this agri-value chain concept? Over to you, Mr. Lovich.
Thank you, Khalid sir, for that question. In fact, I would like to say that it's a very interesting and unique situation in Afghanistan because Afghanistan is getting a lot of returnees from several countries, including Iran, Pakistan, Tajikistan, other neighboring countries. And suddenly there is a situation where a lot of people are coming into the country and they don't have jobs. And you already know what has happened in the recent years. There has been a regime change. During the regime change, in fact, if you look at the stats, 90% of the people were below the poverty line. And much of this workforce, it's being absorbed by agriculture. But then the agriculture in Afghanistan, it's based on traditional methods of farming. There is no much use of technology. Innovations are not there, and much of the farming is based upon rainfed. Much of the farming, much of the agriculture is rainfed. So I can keep on talking about the situation of Afghanistan, but then most of you already know that it's a very critical situation in Afghanistan. In the last 2 years, the humanitarian agencies, they are getting a lot of challenges from the interim, from the DFA, the disaster authority, and their work is getting, too much regulated. And the DFA, for every work which is being done by the international aid agencies in Afghanistan, they need to have permits. There are multiple permits of different ministries and even permits at the district level. So, talking about challenges of, working in Afghanistan, that's at a very different level altogether. But when I talk about value chain and potentials of agriculture value chains in Afghanistan, in 2022, Advent Associates did a very comprehensive value chain assessment of six producers. In fact, we did it for nine, but we selected six based upon discussion with DRC, which commissioned that study. So what we found was that there is a lot of potential in all the value chains, agriculture value chains. We did it for saffron, honey, jujube, almond. So around there were six agriculture producers for which we did the value chain. And what we found is there is immense potential in all these value chains because at different nodes of the value chains, there are there are stakeholders who would require, training, capacity building, inputs in the form of machines, you know. So there's a lot of potential in each of the needs of the value chains. And the most important thing is it's really important for women that these value chains are worked upon because a lot of these value chains they require women to work in the defense. So from the point of view of you know studying the economic situation of women, investment in value chain is a very important factor in Afghanistan. Because all of you know that women are not work outside their home, even the education system, they cannot be part of education system above a certain age. So things have really become difficult for them. But what we found out is that a lot of women are involved in really change because they need to work from home, they need to, process and aggregate and, even package they can do at their home. There are even several women entrepreneurs who are involved in processing of agriculture producers. So that means it's a very good opportunity for women, workforce to get involved in different nodes of value chain. And it's also a very good opportunities for the returnees to, contribute on different nodes of the value chain. So if you ask me the question of returnees and reintegration, I think the value chain is directly, involved in absorbing the returnees from different countries. So, but the thing is that we need to invest. We also need to, change our thoughts. We need to understand that the DFA government, which is there, this is something which I keep on arguing with my organization, with other organizations in Afghanistan also, that we need to see DFA as the new normal because this is not going to change, right? We cannot shun them. We cannot say that we are not going to engage or we're not engaging with the DFA. And that is what we are doing is we are, you know, contributing the critical and the adverse situation in Afghanistan because we are not engaging with the DFA on policy issues. So these are people who are religious leaders who don't have a background in, policy formulations. They don't have a background in development, and they are, leading ministries. So they really need the help and support of different organizations which are working in agriculture, religion, education, whatever think of. So we need to engage with these ministries, with these ministers, and help them formulate policies which can, create enabling environment for the people in the communities. There. So I think that is something which I keep on arguing, and somehow I have been able to, at least um, motivate my own organization to work more closely with the DFA and its different ministries because you cannot do away with them. You have to work. So that is something which all of us should understand that Afghanistan is going through a lot of things, but that is where our role to, work with the different ministries and the departments comes in. And
Yes.
when I say challenges, that also means there is a lot of potential there. Right? So I will stop myself here over from.
Thank you, Navajit, for your the thoughts on how things are functioning in Afghanistan, and more power to you. And we are all here to support you wherever you need any the technical assistance when it comes to improving the landscape of Afghanistan, when it comes to the agri development. Particularly, I believe technology is one thing that can help a lot. And I believe the same thing is resonated in your work. In view of time, I'll be moving forward to Ms. Prakiti Gautam, who is the founder of the Keti Chapati at Nepal. I would request you to share your thoughts and your 2 cents on how Nepal is working at this moment. There are a few pointers which have been highlighted earlier in the discussion in terms of Nepal, but I'll request if you could make your remarks and your the comments around how the local agri initiatives are functioning at this moment, particularly when it comes to an innovative model that exists in promoting the financial stability amongst the SMEs, particularly the smallholder farmers in Nepal, and how that same model could be replicated in South Asia.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. Thank you for having me here. Mr. Krishna Pant has already discussed a lot of challenges in the past, so I'd like to keep my conversation more on the brighter end. I run a private company. I work directly with smallholder farmers. So, as a private company which works at the grassroots in rural setting, I can share my experiences and things that are happening around. Particularly around local government partnerships and partnerships with NGOs and INGOs that have come around very strong in the last recent years. Of course, we all know that Nepal faces difficult geography. Landscape is a challenge. We have poor infrastructure. Cold stores are non-functional, if at all they are present. Roads are not reliable. We have landslides, we have floods, we have droughts, and we're very susceptible to climate change. And I assume that most smallholder farmers across South Asia are not immune to climate change and the changing impact on production as well. Now, if we look at policy uncertainties, of course, that's also one of the biggest factors that I think affect all small and big agricultural stakeholders. In this session, we are talking about public-private partnership, and like Mr. Krishna rightly mentioned, that local governments have come around and they're more active in fostering agricultural ecosystem, there are loopholes, there are execution inefficiencies, but at least there is something happening right now, which wasn't happening a decade earlier, right? So there is obviously a campaign of one region, one product, one season. And while it is a problem to smallholder farmers, especially in terms of managing post-harvest loss, but it has also given an opportunity for other private stakeholders to come in and take advantage of increasing production as a result of collective farming and as a result of mass coming together and growing the same product. I run a factory in avocado processing area, growing area, where over 7,500 households are engaged in avocado. And that has only been possible because the government initiated the campaign for bringing together smallholder farmers into growing avocado, which is more sought for. So the government might not have thought that private sector would come into a picture and think of adding value into the supply chain, but their act, whether far-sighted or whether short-sighted, have culminated into bringing in more and more innovative private sector into the picture. The same story also goes for coffee, for tea, cardamom, ginger, and so on. So we do have a lot of value addition in these products. And there are more coming around dairy as well as other commodities such as dried vegetables and drying technologies. Of course, we do have a lot of challenges that needs to be addressed, and thankfully we have grassroots partners such as local NGOs, national level NGOs, and international organizations. You yourself mentioned Feed the Future somewhere in the beginning, and if we look at that, we definitely think that they have done a lot of work in input management and agri-extension, as you rightly mentioned. However, I do feel that all these efforts are leading to redundancy, or in the case of Nepal, there's so much effort giving into production and very little given into processing and what happens after the production reaches a certain stage. There is, and with these shortcomings, this also means that there is an opportunity for a lot of intervention that can lead to a greater initiatives around processing, value addition, storage, as well as longevity and post-harvest loss minimization. With that, I think at least grassroots organizations have also brought in the awareness and training and digitizations and adoption of digital technology. I think Nepal right now has, especially with it's interesting because with the influx of TikTok and social media platforms, everybody owns a smartphone, or at least one member of the household has a smartphone, and it has become more and more easier to have these smallholder farmers under the umbrella of digital literacy and adoption of technology into their farming practices. However, languages is a barrier. We are still, all the apps are still in English, and a lot of work needs to be done to make the content suitable for different regions, different languages, and so on. I also see, in recent time, these culmination of these efforts from local government has led to cooperatives being very powerful. I remember the time when I had just started my journey into agriculture. Cooperatives were merely meant to do production. So you would have a cooperative of 100, 200 farmers or 50 farmers, and all of them would be growing or producing the same thing, but none of them would be marketing or bargaining for the product. But then with these one product, one region, we've seen a lot of positive changes in the cooperatives where they now set the price for the farmers. The ginger prices have plummeted. They set a trend that, we will not harvest until this time, or this is the minimum selling price. So with that, I think there's a lot of motivation for private sector to also enter agriculture, and not in a regular sense. Mind it, like, we have a high cost of production, our transportation is bad, we do not have storage or any support from the government at the macro scale. But then there are innovative companies that are coming around, and which is really promising for these smallholder farmers, the very little that are actually doing agriculture and not migrated abroad for work. I think I would like to summarize with this, like, we have similar challenges, but given how sporadic our farms are, given how small and fragmented land holdings are, I do think, like Rupsa rightly mentioned, that decentralized approach is one way to go, and this has to be done. And I'm glad that we at least entered the structure of federalism, which otherwise, like whatever development that we have seen around agriculture in the recent time would not have been possible had we not moved into a more decentralized option for either financing or execution of any policies from the national government. Thank you. I hope I answered all your question, Abdullah.
Yes, you did. Atiki, thank you very much for highlighting very key pertinent challenges and how your own self have been contributing toward the agri value chain. I must applaud the work that you're doing. On the other hand, an important factor that you've highlighted, I believe this is something for everyone else to look into, that would be of the product diversification. We do understand when you talk about, and your colleague also from Nepal highlighted, one village and one product. That's very pivotal. That's very important. But the important factor that needs to be looked into, it's this the product diversification that enhances the value chain. So thank you very much. I'll be moving forward to Mr. Suryamani Role, Managing Trustee, Forum of Enterprise for Equitable Development. Suryamani, thank you for waiting, and I would like to hear from you and to learn from you in terms of your experience. How do you foresee the South Asian countries, despite the climate change that we all are going through, and how do you see the shift toward the high value crops and export driven agriculture can be balanced with the need of the smallholder farmers? And how do you channelize the design of the PPPs, the public-private partnerships, that could be equitably benefit for the community which comprises of women and youth in India, and also how it could help out the South Asian agri-value chain. Over to you, Suryaman.
Thank you, friends. I must come in with this observation first, that public-private partnership. I would little expand public-private and community partnership thrives only when there is mutual respect and mutual benefits to each of the parties. And when you club it together with value chains, and that to agree value chains, it is a bit complex because there are multiple actors, multiple sectors, subsectors, and multiple factors also. Climate comes as one of the now crucial factors. Coming to the regional, kind of cooperation, I strongly believe specialization and clusterization are two of the, critical elements for each of the country to specialize, and also ease of doing business between the countries, bearing aside the geopolitical considerations. Coming from the angle of public-private partnership in India currently, we in Forum of Enterprises for Equitable Development, jointly with the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce, which is the Federation of Private Sector, we sit and shake hand with the government Ministry of Agriculture, as the project management unit to facilitate public-private partnership. This is one of the mechanisms. I will not say that's the only mechanism. There are multiple mechanisms of doing trade, specializing, clusterizing, and also in a competitive advantageous mode. Coming to climate change, all of us are affected. I don't have to elaborate because my colleagues and panelists have already talked about that. The key question is agriculture is such a complex, kind of thing. It's not one crop, one commodity. It is nobody has counted how many commodities, how many crops, and I will expand it to further agriculture, horticulture, livestock, allied agriculture, and also forestry sector. If you bring them together, it will be food system. And I set an example for guar, the cluster bean, which is India and Pakistan produces 100 almost like 90%. I'm setting one example, and this has multiple uses, and we use for human consumption, beautification as well as exploration of petroleum that is used for fracking purpose. India produces almost 70% of global production. Pakistan also contributes around 20%. And no other country. This is very, very specialized. What is the mechanism of price fixation benefiting the farmers? All are smallholder farmers. Interestingly, we work for the marginal part of the inclusivity. When you talk about inclusivity, we talk about the marginal farmers, which is a large segment within the smallholder farmer, broad definition. So my point is, when you talk of public-private community partnership, I recall kind of a book by one economist, Raghuram Rajan, who has written a book called The Three Pillars. One side government, other side private sector, and third side community. And it is an interplay of the three players. And now technology comes in. We need technology, and panelists have already talked about technology integration. Technology is just kind of a enabler. It's not going to directly work faster unless it is applied properly. Usage is there, application is there. In India, we have more than 1,000, agri startups providing solutions for in the agri domain. And like you mentioned about e-choppal, there are plenty of e-choppals both in government sector and also in private sector. Now about the cooperative, this is a good mechanism for aggregation. So when I come to the farmers, marginal farmers, smallholder farmers, they need kind of platforms for aggregation. In India, we have more than 50,000 farmer producer companies. We have lakhs, thousands of cooperatives, which is also we are looking at internationally our cooperatives this year 2025. So this is giving a boost. At the same time, production, productivity, yield, like we have also in India concept called one product, one district, one product. We have more than 600 or districts. So Government of India. So there is a responsibility matrix that we have to look at. And since you talked about the trade part, I think the kind of example that I said, there are plenty of examples of such nature. Each of the country, be it Africa, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, I did a study. I was associated as the lead, 2 years back for triangular cooperation. A third country coming in to invest in South Asian countries for technologies transfer with respect to commodities and crops, whether be it cereals, pulses, high value crops, forestry crops. So what are these? Technology is one of the enablers, and we found there are more than 25 such technologies which India can support. And out of that, we prioritize which country needs such kind of thing, and we did that. And one of the thing, if I recall correctly, is like weather forecasting centers is one of the kind of enabling system which can easily go to any other thing like for, and again it is commodity specific cluster. We have 15 agroclimatic zones in India. Similarly, also in other countries too, we have classification of agroclimatic zone depending on the rain depending on the soil. So, but to become climate resilient, now we talk also regenerative agriculture. We talk about sustainable agriculture. We talk about, various things, but it is all sustainable agriculture. Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. But this is a topic of great interest, and it's too little a time to elaborate all these things. But public-private partnership in each of the domains, be it access to information, access to technology, access to finance, access to market, India is full of examples, and we can definitely not only share but also learn from other countries, like friend from Nepal, friend from Afghanistan on horticulture front. They are doing fantastic job before such kind of thing. Even Pakistan. So there should be a learning exchange, and Chamber of Commerce could be one avenue. And so also we can come forward to look at really public-private partnership internationally, regionally. Thank you.
Yes, regional integration is very important. So, Manisa, we have rightly pointed that trade competitiveness is something that needs to be looked into, and that's only possible. And that when I would steal that particular thing you have coined right now, public-private community partnership from you, and I'll be using it at different platforms. That is something pivotal, and you've rightly pointed. Thank you very much. Moving forward, I'll be taking. Mr. Muntasir Saqib Khan. Thank you very much for joining. He's the country director at IFDC from Bangladesh. Uh, we have a bouquet of speakers, Muntasir Saab, who have been highlighting and sharing their thoughts on how they have been functioning when it comes to the government, when it comes to the private sector, when it comes to community-based organizations, how they are playing their role and contributing toward the value chain. But I would like to hear from you based on your extensive experience in the development sectors. What are the key barriers that you think, and what are the key opportunities that are pertinent and pivotal for scaling up the public-private driven agricultural value chains across the region? And how can we promote the greater cross-border collaborations in this domain? If you could also highlight in your own experience when it comes to managing the global development projects that you have looked into as well, what lessons have you learned from the Bangladesh public-private partnership models when it comes to agri-type, to climate-smart agriculture, and how those could be replicated or adapted for other South Asian countries, despite the fact we know that the climate change has been impacting and there are different impacts. Sri Lanka is having irregular rainfalls. Pakistan is going through a drought at this moment. Same condition is within India. I would say half is suffering from drought and half is suffering from rainfall. So these conditions also impacting the agriculture resilience in the South Asian countries. Over to you, Muntasir Saab, for your thoughts and your 2 cents on this.
Thank you, Abdullah, for having me today, and I'm honored to also being among all these team professionals and the colleagues from different countries today. So I would try my best to divide the answers in 3 major parts, like as you asked. So one of the things, like I always hear when we talk about value chains or linking with private sector, like often you'll hear like people address like, how can we introduce more fruits and vegetables, maybe even spices, or like high value crops? But the question is, we are also talking about the food security, right? So this food security also means the food security for the people who is living on those territories or those geographies. So often we also forget to make a balance, because like when, let's say, if rice is a staple, that means like we have to produce enough rice in the region, right? So not only farmer produces, also like the consumer can consume in a price which they can afford this. So sometimes, like while government or development sector focuses on food security, on the other hand, like there is a trend or there is a big idea that like we should focus on that. So it's also about the demand and supply. So I'm not promoting like we should not go for more fruits and vegetables, but it's about timing. It's about the market. When you produce what? Say, for example, I'm making cauliflower. My fellow farmers all around me are making cauliflower at the same time, exactly same planting season, exactly same harvesting season, right? So what happens when it goes to market at the same point of time, we all have cauliflowers. So the price that the farmer is supposed to get, he or she is not getting that price. That means in next season, it will also make the farmer think like whether even I should do cauliflower. So there is a lack of information when we should do what, and how we can solve it is definitely the blend. It's not only private sector can solve it, it not only government can solve it. There are things from the government side which probably needs like more policies to drive or like to guide also the private sector, like, okay, we have infrastructures for you, or maybe if you invest on infrastructure like cold chain, different storage facilities for after the post harvest, how we can do it, food processing facilities, or those kind of things. Even we think about the cross border export kind of thing, there are certain standards to meet. Our farmer probably doesn't know it. So it's probably someone has to come up with the policy guideline, and someone has to also come up with the like private sector initiative. There has to be ownership, there has to be a business like who is facilitating those things. They are part of the supply chain. And also you have to see like how we can add value. So I have worked in many countries in Asia and Africa. Like I can bring you an example. Like there is a pineapple farmer who does, let's say 100 units of pineapple. And like if he goes to the market during the season and sells all the pineapple, he's just getting the exact same price like any other, like the fellow farmers, right? So if that farmer is also guided by some company, and basically they say like, okay, don't sell your fresh produce 100 units to just go to the fresh market. Probably you sell 40 units, and probably you make juice out of 20 units, and probably you dry out and add more value by packaging and processes those things. And the idea is how we can take this to the supermarket in big cities. So this is like a linkage where you see, like we sometimes call it like from farm to fork, right? So there is a move of products or services, and there is also value addition when they get different sort of pricing for like their products or services. So this is something important. One is balance, and one is like demand and supply. So how do we choose which crop to do, which season, what exactly is the timing? If there is a land where we can do like 2 seasons, how we can do like 3 seasons, or like even introduce one more short season varieties and those kind of things. That's how you also increase the income of the farmer. So there is a driver that farmer will also do those things. So that's one of the aspect. The other aspect probably you were asking, like the public private partnership. So often like in countries like Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, or like even in Central Asia, or many countries in Africa, so the government is not always equipped with the latest technologies, but government has the platform, right? There are local research institutes in the countries, like they are directly linked. There are agricultural extension officers, and they are like support wings where basically across the country who works directly with the farmer. So at IFDC, like how we do it is like we also work closely with the government. So that means we can talk to them on the policy level. We know like what is happening in the global level, and we can inform them, and they can basically make it a policy part, and also how they do budget for things like fertilizer, other inputs. And on the other hand, we also do very closely work with private sector. Say, for example, different machineries like different John Deere tractors, big ones, harvesters, probably those are good for European or American kind of like landscape, like where you have vast lands and you can utilize those kind of machineries, right? But think of Bangladesh, think of India or Nepal, like we have so much fragmented lands, we have ice. Maybe those tractors or those machineries are not adapted for our kind of scenario. So we have to have also local innovations and work with the local companies. We can basically learn from the technologies from different countries, and we have to see how locally we can make these things available, locally produce these things. How can we make a $20,000 equipment in less than like $3,000 in India? that would be interesting for farmers. That would probably be a lead farmer would be able to buy this, but that lead farmer would not be probably able to buy a $20,000 equipment or 3 units of those kind of things. So we have to work with not only like big private sector players in our countries, we have to also work with like small and medium-sized enterprise who are in the basically depth of the bloodstream of the country, like far beyond like we should call this last mile, where the farmers are actually producing food. And there are those companies. We have to probably also work with those companies and those private sectors to make sure like those machineries, those equipments are available. And when our farmers will be informed, it's an era of like digital technology and like information. Like surprisingly now farmers I have seen in most of the countries, the progressive one, they are connected. They are also connected, and they are seeing like what kind of applications the government have, what kind of other things are working better for others. How can we do these things? So these are happening in piecemeal basis. I mean, in pieces, in different bases. Like if we enable those things and connect those dots, like it would be very interesting. And I think like there will be the perfect output and blend of demand supply as well. I forgot your third questions. Can you repeat it one more time for me, Abdullah?
Thank you, Dr. Montasif, for highlighting those key pertinent things. I believe I agree with your point when it comes to the market linkage that needs to be looked into. When it comes to the farmers, the important factor that is missing, and I believe every country and every community and every organization is playing a very important role in enhancing their capacities. But still, when it comes to the cross-border trade, or when it comes to the markets, accessibility of market, this is something that needs to be looked into. And lastly, it's the product diversification that's very important. From here, I'll be handing over the floor to my co-moderator, Ankush, for the second round of intervention. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ankush.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Khalid, for moderating the session so far. Very, very interesting points, and I had been noting down the inputs from all the speakers. And I had certain follow-up questions, which based on the discussion I have noted down, and I would like to ask. Dr. Suleri, I just wanted to, based on your inputs, how do you see how important it is to enable the small farmer voices? Because when we talk about private sector, they have their own bodies which advocate for it. And we also have the big and big government, which definitely is very hard to deal with for anybody. So where does this small farmer fits, and how the institutions which enable these voices becomes important?
Ankush, it's Abdullah. Just wanted to add in, Dr. Suleri will be joining again at the end.
Okay, so I'll take that question at that point of time. So, Dr. Manoj, I was very intently listening to what you had to share. And you also talked about the comparative advantage, what David Ricardo also shares. From the discussion has come up, there are 3 points to it. One is the food security. Then there is this new demand which is coming from the market itself of healthy food or organic food. And then there is a third sector which talks about the high value crops, which is either medicinal aromatic plants or BT cotton or any cash crop. So how do you see that policymakers can engage farmers and private sector in ensuring that we are moving in the right direction, creating a balance between these three? And let's keep our answers short, because I think we also have to do the time check as well.
Yeah, Yeah, I think when we talk about the food security, sometimes we think that it's food self-sufficiency. It's not the food security. Food security can be achieved by even importing. So it should be based on the comparative advantage. So the country should produce what they have the comparative advantage locally. So other thing is it's very important for income generation and going for high value crops in Sri Lanka. It's like we have not seen much of transformation of crops in agriculture. So we are limited to a very small crop base. So these days we are talking about going for value-added crops, but because we need some income for export income and things like that. So we are now focusing on more value-added crop and especially focusing on nutrition aspect as well, because our consumption of fruit and vegetables is very low, lower than the recommended amount by WHO, 400 grams per day. So we are focusing on these things. So in terms of as a research organization, we are basically we as a policy research, economic policy research institute, we just limited ourselves to just do the policy research, but now we are moving towards implementation research as well, go to the field and implement different areas. We are working on like estimating forced harvest losses, what are the factors affecting forced harvest losses, how to minimize this and implementing at the farmer level as well. So these things are happening, and also we are working on training with the public sector and private sector. We are working on especially in the fruit and vegetable sector, training farmers all island. So it's a TOT program with the government Department of Agriculture as well as the Fruit and Vegetables Producers, Processors and Exporters Association. So as researchers, we can do a lot in terms of linking public sector and private sector as well as farmers. So in terms of research, policy advocates, and also training, things like that. So so these things I think we are currently focusing on. So I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. This time I'll go to Prakriti because she is the only voice of the market, I would say here. When the private sector engages with the government and when it reaches out to the farmers, what's the outlook? Because as a private company, you also have to survive. You have to make profits. Unless you make profits, you would not be able to work for people probably as your corporate social responsibility asks you to. But how do you engage with government and what kind of enabling channels would facilitate that journey? Because it's not easy to work with the government.
Yeah, I think our experiences in Nepal has been very different because first thing first, private sectors are very concentrated in urban areas, and agriculture mostly happens in rural areas, which often lacks access to 24/7 roads. And also basic facilities like high voltage electricity lines and henceforth. So while establishing since the very beginning, I think infrastructure that goes beyond the scope of private sector is the first step for partnering with the government. And secondly, as while working with different regions and different local governments, I think the core part for the private sector is to identify what the interest of the local politician is, and for the 5 years, what is their agenda, what does the vote bank look like, and this is the grim reality that political agenda needs to be addressed. And once we do that, I think government is willing to come on board. It has happened in the past. For example, the tea industry, local government are always willing to support private sector that uplifts tea growers or collectors and so forth for horticulture region as well. With farmers, I think they're very simple. Immediate gratification is something that they look for. Long-term partnership is also something that they look for. However, in areas that's nearing India border, like they do not look for long-term partnerships in our experience, because the prices are really fluctuating season to season. And in such a case, I think the fairness and the fair price is something that small farmers always look for. It is a very thin line to be in, like especially as a social enterprise working with these smallholder farmers. You do intend to make profit, but in an ethical way, and you want to collaborate with as many local governments as possible, but you cannot stretch yourself to the max. And this is where the critical point of, like, interest versus agenda versus profit comes in. And I guess it's more of a trial and error and relationship building process, and everybody would have a different story.
Yeah, very, very important point. And I think I'll just take your point and take it to Ms. Roopsi Garg. You also had been talking about the decentralized system like Prakriti has talked about in the earlier answer. How important do you think is a market signal? Because why are we okay with companies looking for profits, government looking for economy, but when we want to go to farmers and ask them to resolve to the climate resilient practices, also go for crops which are probably helps in diversifying the whole commodity basket. So how do you see the price signal coming from the market as an important point to enable the farmers to move to the new value chains? Miss Roopsi, can you hear me? Okay, looks like some network issue. So I'll move to Mr. Surimani. Sir.
Yes.
I think we have had multiple discussions outside this forum as well.
Yes.
And I think one thing probably which I would want you to highlight here is the role of these PPP value chain architect. I think your organization feed currently plays that. And we have seen how with very limited investment in this organization, it has enabled, I would say, like thousands of crore of investment in the value chains. Yes. And partnered with more than 25 different players. So what do you think, do you think this value chain architect role can be a game changer for different economies?
Definitely, I do consider this architectural role is a game player. Whether you call it facilitation, architectural design, there is a need for somebody to facilitate this process. And I see you also were asking somebody at the beginning, for farmers, it is POP, package of practices makes the farmer, kind of empowered, because the production, productivity, yield rate, and the volume increases by that process. I'm not talking of the risk. There are plenty of risks in the agricultural field. The business, and when I started my discussion, I started partnership thrive only when there is a respect and mutual benefit. Here, it is SOP, the standard operating processes and procedures for determining whose interest and who is paying the dividend and who is paying the price for each of it. Somebody has to pay for the price. So that answers broader question. For individual cases, it has to be really linked in. Yeah. Hope I clarified your question. Yeah.
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much. I would now move to Mr. Krishnapan. Sir, you explained multiple challenges the farmers are facing right now, including abandonment of a lot of land and not doing the cultivation because it's not lucrative enough right now. What stayed with me was the risk sharing point, where you said if anything goes wrong, the risk lies with the farmer. And so I would like probably your inputs on how a PPP intervention can design products which can ensure that the farmer is able to take up these new risks, because agriculture is the most risky profession, I would say, and at the same time has some hedge against that risk.
Yeah, thank you very much. Farmers are taking risk. Risks are different. They are facing market risk. They're not getting good market at the right time when they produce. And they are getting facing climate risk, landslide, floods, droughts, insect pest. Okay, so many climate risks are there. Okay, both market risk and climate risk farmers are bearing, and farmers trying to find the exit from the farm. That's why lots of lands are abandoned, villages are abandoned. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, now what I think now risk sharing mechanism is developed by the government. Insurance system is there, but we have a cost-based insurance. Farming cost is insured, but verification from farm to farm for indemnity is very, very difficult, being small farms. Okay, how to assess the loss? Who will assess the loss? Loss assessment cost is very high. That's why that type of insurance is not getting popular among the farmers, in spite of 80% premium subsidy by the government. Government is providing 80% premium subsidy, but farmers are not taking that insurance. Okay, very few farmers are taking. Okay, now we need to go for index-based insurance so that verification, product loss verification will be easy. Now, for that, the insurance is done by private sector. Now, government should facilitate the private sector by developing congenial policy regime, okay, so that private sector can thrive, can work in the market. Okay. Not only insurance, but input supply, output marketing, road transportation, storage, product processing, value addition, all these things need to be supported. Government needs to support through policy reform and then through linking the trade in South Asian region. Now, we were talking about SAFTA. Several years we discussed about SAFTA, but SAFTA couldn't move ahead due to long list of negative commodities. Negative list was very long for every country. As I remember, all South Asian countries, they were putting potato in the negative list, every country. Similarly, many products are under the negative list. That's why SAFTA couldn't survive. Okay, couldn't move ahead. Okay, now let's think for those regional initiatives, sharing the products in the region, okay, so that market can be linked and farmers can get a better price. Okay, now role of the government here is to create platform for the private sector to work in the value chain, agriculture value chain. Okay, and then provide stable policy stability, so that private sector can clearly perceive the risk, okay, can calculate the risk. Okay, when the risk is low, projects can be viable, okay, financially viable. And those projects are economically viable not financially viable, government needs to support for the private sector. And at the same time, government should safeguard the well-being of farmers and well-being of the consumers. Okay, both, because consumers, everybody needs food. That's the challenge with the agriculture. Everybody needs food every day. Okay, that's why government should safeguard the interest of the private consumers, and private sector, both.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. I'm sorry
Thank
to
you.
cut you short, but I also have to ensure that we end in time. Uh, 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 I'll now go to Mr. Muntasir Khan. You talked about the market intelligence awareness, and you also mentioned there needs to be a balance between probably moving to a high value crop, but at the same time ensuring that there is food security in the country. There are new startups and initiatives by the governments also coming up, which are focusing on digital and smart agriculture, which are bringing information and technology closer to the farmers. What role you see of PPP in this particular segment, because this becomes extremely crucial in ensuring that there is parity among people who have and who don't have this information available?
Thank you, Ankush. Great question. So, like, I am a firm believer, like, all the initiatives should be led by private sectors, right? Because I believe in ownership. You see, like, I have worked in many kind, not in agriculture, like many kinds of like development projects where I have seen like funding coming in, huge amount of funding, I can tell you. And like they build infrastructure like toilets, wash facilities, access to clean water facilities and those kind of things. But what happens is like it's the cruel truth. Like when the project is done, there is a question who owns it. So nobody takes care of those facilities, and those things dies out or phases out very with time. So that's why I see like even each farmer as an entrepreneur. And like because you say like it's the time where technology is leading, some of them are like front runners, some of them are not. So our private sector players, the small startups or the high tech one, they are going to them. But often it also seems like they are going to sell their products, but there has to be a synergy. Everyone has to win in this game. So that means farmers make money, those intermediaries also make money, and at the same time, like the everyone in the high up in the value chain also they make money. And at the same time, we get good food, safe food in our plate, right? Irrespective of where we live in the world. So but now the question is, even though I'm praising this private sector, all the jobs also cannot be done by the private sector. So there is a role of government. So government actually wants to do a lot of things, and they want to provide service to everyone. But when they cannot, they provide probably support on policy or like administrative access and those kind of things. Private sector comes up with like their product and services. But the question is, the private sector talks different language. They often cannot or do not sit with the government. And there is also development sector sitting somewhere in the middle, right? So previous to this job, I used to work with a Dutch company globally and work with like small businesses, startup and the large ones. What I learned is like, irrespective of our economic status or whatever we earn, we all make decisions every day on what to purchase, what to eat, and those kind of things. Just like that, our low income consumers does the same thing, middle income and high income does the same thing. So when like we often talk about medical facilities, health, and those kind of things, it was supposed to be done by the government. When government is not able to do that, someone is coming in and basically ensuring the vacancy has been covered and the opportunity has been taken. So when we put these three players together in one table, then there has to be a facilitation. To some extent, I see these development players, they do this facilitation. The social businesses come in, the private sector come in, and government comes with the infrastructure and other thing. So in combination of that, it has to go on and it has to come up as a holistic approach. That's how we solve the game. Otherwise, none of them alone will solve the game. Thank you.
you. So I think in interest of time, Mr. Khalid, shall we open the floor to people to ask questions? Maybe we can take one or two quick questions if anyone in audience has the questions. So thanks for patiently listening for last 2 hours. And I must say, it had been a very, very engaging conversation. I wish we could talk for longer hours, because there are so many topics which we just touched upon but couldn't go in detail. And probably we'll do a follow-up conversation on it within this platform at some point of time. But in case anybody has any questions, any follow-up questions or any questions to be asked, please raise your hands and I'll facilitate the process.
Or if someone has any questions that they can send out to us later on, we can forward the same question to our August speakers, panelists. They can respond accordingly as well.
Great. So Mr. Khalid, over to you before we.
Thank you very much, Ankush, for taking the discussion forward. Esteemed speakers, audience, thank you very much for a very thought-provoking session. Indeed, there are multiple challenges that exist throughout the South Asian countries when it comes to the agri-value chain. No doubt we have to move forward to a very diverse, inclusive the strategy that would be helpful in creating a platform where all the South Asian countries can club together when it comes to the regional partnership that is quite important. Either it's the agri-tech or it's the climate solutions that are required in terms of the climate change that we are going to. There are many points that have been highlighted by the esteemed the panelists. Multiple things that have been raised when it comes to the irregular climate change that are prevailing in Sri Lanka, in other countries as well, where the drought is very prominent. Similarly, the public-private community partnerships, as Surya Saab has directly pointed, this is something pivotal that needs to be looked into. On the contrary, the infrastructure that exists within the South Asian countries in terms of logistics, in terms of the technical capacity needs to be addressed. And I believe the most important component that our speakers have highlighted is the trade competitiveness, which can be aggravated by leading to digital solutions, by digital cross-border trade. And lastly, the important factor is the socioeconomic indicators, which have been impacting the communities and also the farming concept that exists within the countries that needs to be looked into. With this, we are thankful to everyone for your thoughts, your 2 cents, your guidance on how to take things forward. We'll be reaching out to you with the press release that would be going out to the media houses by our organizers. And similarly, we are doing the same. If you have any other pertinent issue that needs to be highlighted, do write to us. We remain available for any collaboration. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Over to you, Ankush.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Had a great session, and we'll remain connected.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.